Can you talk a little bit about Monarch and how you see that fitting into the current music and media world?
Yeah, so I always start with when I look at building innovation and technologies with people, it always starts on a needs first, not an ideas first. There's two different mindsets that you approach it. So when looking, I've been involved with most of the people on the call, probably been involved in the music industry for a long, long time internationally. You get to know the complexity of the industry and you start to marry that and looking at the problems of artists and the ability for publishers to be able to have any sort of control over any sort of playback of anything. It's these label deals going on, and what's been happened is that the artists are on this diminishing path of diminishing returns, whereby the content they're creating is so commoditized and the tools are so readily available that it makes a greater influx of content, which makes it harder to discover. And there's all these things like people don't want to go out anymore because it's too costly and they want to stay at home. All these competing forces, which is driving the value of the end product down and down and down. And it's being controlled by a huge, smaller and smaller number of people as they get acquired. And so when you look at that side of it, then you look at what's happening in generative AI, the ability to write a prompt and generate content on the fly. We're at this fundamental part in human history where art is changing fundamentally. And what it means to be an artist is changing fundamentally. You have technologies that can create things in seconds on a prompt, whether you want to argue at the moment whether it's got real human emotion or not. We're at the very beginning of this journey with AI. And where I think if I look back in history, points in history, like ASCAP with the piano rolls, with Napster, when there's these changes in technology, the first port of call is fight against it, stop it from happening. And so looking at that, I started and being in the generative AI space and being a musician and being involved in rights and building many technologies in the past that have brought to market through the music industry. We had these conversations, John and Ken, we started saying, well, my belief is in the future, the content, the file, the media asset, the song, the movie is not where the transaction lies. That used to be the old world. And if we think about it from the birth of recorded music, as a listener now, design thinking, putting the listener lens on. The listener has only been able to do a couple of things with that recorded work. Turn up the volume, change the treble and bass, and a bit of EQ. Recently, there have been some advancements like Dolby Atmos, which is an algorithm to try and make the sound around you in an ambisonic environment. But for the most part, the listener has never been able to interact with the art. And that's fine because it's about the art. It's the artist.
Right.
Now we're getting into a world whereby the value of the artist's work is now being demonetized. Well, not demonetized, but it's with 100,000 songs being added to Spotify every day, with the tools to make that anyone with any level of talent can create anything, and with these AI tools, even in the production software, which a lot of people that I know that are musicians will talk about AI and they go, well, this AI thing, blah, blah. I go, you're already using it. Do you use Logic? Do you use Ableton? Do you use Ozone and Native Instruments? These tools have AI in them. So in a way, you're creating using AI. It's just a different version of it. So the principle I got to was this, that if the content is no longer, or it's in the future, it won't be where the transactable value is. Where is the transactable value?
Mm-hmm.
Where is the value in content going forward? Because I would argue, if I asked a question to everyone on this call, do you think that the music industry model is working for you? Are you able to afford a living off it? You may be, but for the most part, I think most people say it's not working for me. So I believe, knowing about generative AI, that the future of content and in the transactional value is the interface between a prompt and the likeness and style of an artist. And so much like a likeness and style of that's been used for a long time in copyright or other types of methodologies, it's how might we start to, using AI, interrogate content in a way whereby we can build a style fingerprint which can be intercepted when someone types a prompt in a generative AI engine. So we believe the hypothesis was instead of trying to stop generative AI engines and people being able to write a prompt which will generate a song that sounds a bit like this, we can interface a write just like a mechanical or a master recording or any of the other types of rights that currently exist, sync rights or whatever.
Yeah.
This methodology already exists. It's a proven method to monetize content. Um, but there needs to be a new right for generative AI, one that is A, has the ability to build a neural style transfer, and I'll explain that in a minute, which is an existing technology. It already exists where you can pull out 70 or 80 different feature extractions from a whole entire catalog of artists' works and then build the connective tissue between that and the large generative AI commercial platforms.
Right.
So when a prompt, write me a song that sounds a bit like Coldplay with these lyrics over here in a style of country music, that prompt itself can get interrogated and create and invoke a license transaction. So
Mhm.
that was the hypothesis, looking at how might we understand from MFCCs and fast Fourier transform, which is part of the MFCC process. I'm talking a little bit technical now, but this is how we,
A little bit.
yeah. So, but in essence, music has a time domain. It goes over
Yeah.
a period of time,
Yeah.
right? So you need to turn that time domain into a frequency spectrum. You might have seen a spectrograph, like colored pictures of
Sure.
what your audio looks like.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. And then, you know,
So, Finn, this sounds like it's a game changer. This sounds like this could be the future of music and media to
well,
me.
look, I first off, I think it is. If we think about analog tape and then going to digital MP3s or AIFs or
Yeah.
uncompressed audio, whatever, we tend to think of, let's in a digital world mimic the analog world. Let's give you an example. An Edit Suite Final Cut Pro has a picture of a tape on the timeline, which you cut it up with
Yeah.
digital tools. And it's to represent a reel of a video with thumbnails.
Yeah.
And so, but as these things evolve, new technologies can be included into it. I talked about, so I think it'll be a game changer, but let me just jump in. I've talked about the problem from the artist's perspective.
Yeah.
Let me talk about the problem now from the labels and the publisher's perspective. They're both different, actually, the way I see it. But if I went to a label now and I said, what completely new monetization tools do you have at your feet to generate a ton of money without doing any work?